Looks pretty good. A story of glitz, wealth, and celebrity. Just the kind of thing you might expect to see on an episode of the show Dallas. And that's exactly where the story behind Cutter Frisco growing up on the original South Fork begins. One of the greatest intros of all times to a show. Douglas Box grew up on the legendary Box Ranch in Frisco. The ranch was used as the original South Fork in the first several episodes of the show Dallas. And now he's written a book about what it was like growing up on the original South Fork, and he's here to share it with us. Welcome. So nice to have you here.
Thank you, Jane. Great to be at GMT.
You said your life was a little bit like the real Dallas, right?
Yes, it was. It was in some ways, indeed, yeah.
Well, okay, so the Box Ranch was used on the first season of the show Dallas. Your dad, Cloyce Box, played in the NFL. He was a businessman, a tycoon. And was he like JR? Was he like Jock?
He was a lot like JR, but as I say in my book, he was actually a lot bigger than JR. I really don't think he was the JR, but I think he was part of the inspiration behind it.
And you said that, so tell us a little bit, give us a good tease here about the real life on the Box Ranch, celebrities and...
Well, yeah, like I said it before, it was just a larger-than-life lifestyle that we lived out there, and it was wonderful growing up because it was a real working ranch. We had horses and cattle, and we rode worked cattle all the time, had race horses, and this was not a dude ranch. It was not a show. It was not a show ranch.
Right.
It became that, but it was a working ranch for most of the time.
And you had Miss Americas on the property, right?
Well, my cousin Brenda Box was Miss Texas and competed in the Miss USA pageant and was first runner-up Miss USA. So yes, we definitely had our share of beauty queens on the show.
In fact, even Frank and Kathy Lee Gifford, I think, came to your dad's funeral. So it was the real deal.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What then? Many of us remember the fire. Tell us what happened.
Well, it was just a terrible painting accident. The fire took place in 1987, and the house was being remodeled. And while it was being remodeled, the painters set that fire off. It was just kind of a freak accident, and there wasn't water out there in Frisco, and so we lost the house. And so Dad was never able to build it back. The structure that's seen there today is a skeleton of what was there before, and so he died in the middle of trying to reconstruct the big house. And so many people drive by there and they don't know what it is.
Right.
They wonder about it, and so that's part of why I wrote the book.
And if you want to know where it is, it's kind of at the corner of Preston and Main.
It's at the northeast corner of Main Street, Frisco, and Preston Road.
A Frisco that was not like Frisco then.
Correct.
It's changed enormously.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get to the show for just a minute. First of all, the name of your book, Cutter Frisco, where'd that come from? Cutter
Frisco was the name of my horse, which was a cutting horse. And that was his real name. And this is me on the. He was my favorite horse, and he was sired by the championship cutting horse, Cutter Bill, and he was just a beautiful gold-colored gelding that was just my favorite cutting horse.
And one of the things you talk about in the book was the actual show. And you were telling me before we went on, those people lived hard when they came to Dallas to film.
Well, they believed in working hard, and they believed in playing hard. Absolutely. And they were kind enough to let me hang out with them a little bit. I was pretty young. I was only like 22. Ironically, I was a student in college, and I was a radio, TV, film major.
Really?
Yeah.
And so you decided to write a book. That
Exactly.
was smart.
Yeah.
So what were they like? Give me some Bobby, Victoria Principal. I mean, what were they like?
You know, they were all just really nice people. I just can't tell you how down to earth. I mean, none of them were famous. Larry
At that time,
yeah, Larry Hagman was sort of a semi-star, and you didn't really talk to him, but all the other ones were just so easy to talk to. And they were hardworking. They'd get up really early in the morning, and they work all day, and they were just the nicest people you ever met.
Linda Gray was one of my favorites.
Absolutely.
She just seemed Texas.
She was. She was.
Well, so that reminds me of something. You knew the real life ranchers and Dallasites and Texans. How much was the show and the characters on the show, how much did they reflect the people you really knew?
Not very well, to be honest. most of them weren't from here. Well, Larry Hagman was a Texan, I think.
Right.
But
From Weatherford.
we all knew it was a television show, I'll put it that way. And it wasn't that close to reality. But, you know, we knew it was Hollywood, so it was fun.
And speaking of reality, I was reading somewhere that when they were filming the first episode, if you go back and look at that, they actually filmed it during an ice storm.
Yes.
So they're riding, I think it's Bobby, is riding down the road in a convertible, and if you look closely, you can see ice.
Right.
On the field next
Yeah,
to him.
yeah.
Typical Texas. So why did you decide to write a book?
Well, I wrote the book because this is an important story for the history of Frisco. You know, I call the old ranch, it's like the Stonehenge of Frisco. There's a lot of curiosity about this piece of property, and it's also a very personal story for me. It's very important to the heritage and history of Frisco because the town is changing so much so fast that they're trying to preserve as much of the heritage. They have a whole heritage center now, and that's very important to the city leaders of Frisco.
I've got to ask you one final question.
Sure.
Your dad really was like Jock. He ran the producers off, right?
Yes, he did.
He said, I got a ranch to run?
Yep. He said, I got a ranch to run, and he wasn't that crazy about the way the family was being portrayed. So he was just a real Texan, and he wanted his ranch back.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Doug, for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Good
Thank
book. You can meet Doug Box Thursday night at the Barnes & Noble at Stonebriar Center in Frisco. He'll be signing books beginning at 7:30, or you can log on to cutterfrisco.com for more information about the book. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane.